The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly Podcast, coming to you Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. Once again here with our boy, NBA analyst, author, every week with us, talking NBA with him, Greg Hrinya. Greg, how's your Memorial weekend?
Very good, very short, but the weather was good at the end of it, so I guess I can't complain too much.
You're lucky. You had to work all weekend, man. All 4 days of the weekend I had to work. So, yeah, hope you enjoy. I don't hear you complain about you being too short. I didn't get any part of the weekend to really enjoy it whatsoever. So, we got a lot going in the NBA, of course. We're right now in the midst of the conference finals. Of course, you have the Knicks and the Pacers, game 4 tonight. We'll get to that in a second. But to last night, we had the Oklahoma City Thunder move into one game closer to making their second NBA Finals appearance in franchise history. Well, actually, technically, is not the OKC version of it, because remember, people forget they are still technically the Seattle Supersonics, who did win an NBA championship in 1979. So technically, that is a thing. But as the Thunder, the second appearance as the Oklahoma City Thunder, as they beat the Wolves by 2 last night, another solid game. I did tell you off the air though that I did watch the game, but I didn't watch the game because of I was in and out of sleep, during the game last night. But what I did see is that every time I woke up, the Thunder pretty much had control of the game for the most part. It felt competitive, but it never felt like Minnesota had a chance, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, they never really had the ball to tie or take the lead. So every time they cut it to 2, the Thunder went right down and scored, either getting to the line or getting a bucket, bumping it back up to 4 or 5. And then when they did cut it down, then last 15 seconds, OKC was playing the foul game. And so even then, it's not like they had a shot to tie it. So it was probably the most lopsided 2-point deciding margin that you're ever going to see.
Yeah, but, of course.
To your point, I feel like OKC was in control pretty much.
Yeah,
from start to finish, even though it looks good on paper, I feel like every time it got close, they pushed it back, and it's not like Minnesota had a chance to take a 3 to win the game or anything like that. It was never at that level.
And last night once again proved to me why SGA did deserve the MVP. I think I'm not mistaken. You did also agree with SGA's MVP. I know I did. And again, it's not a knock at Nikola Jokic. We all both agree that Jokic is the best player in the NBA. Both can be right here. But at the same time, when you have a guy like SGA who led the league in scoring this year, who also had his team 2 wins shy of winning 70. I mean, again, that's one angle of this story no one's talking about. The fact that the Thunder were 2 wins from 70 wins, and no one's talking about it. That's crazy. Last night, he had 40 points, 9 boards, 10 assists. Not the most efficient shooting night, 13 and 30, but at the same time, when you're a scorer like he is, and you have to win a very important game to avoid, drawing even and going back home for best out of 3, you do what you got to do. And he came through and did what he had to do last night.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 31 points in the series. That's including a game that they basically were punting on in game 3 because it got out of control. So, I mean, if you take that out, he's giving you probably, 35, 36 points a game, almost 9 assists a game, turnovers around 3. So, I mean, he's controlling the pace, and he's, again, like I was mentioning before, when you talk about every time the game got close, he would make a play. Either that was finding Jalen Williams for a 3 or getting to the line. The way that he controls the game, and also he's not a bad defensive player. I mean, not that Jokic is awful, but I don't think that anyone would characterize him as this defensive giant.
I wouldn't call Jokic a turnstile at this point. He's not a great defensive player, but he's not a turnstile like other players in the league are.
True. But I will say that Shea is a much better defender at his position than Jokic is at his.
I disagree with that. I 100% agree with you on that one. Absolutely.
In my opinion. So, I mean, if you're figuring that Shea is, scoring 30 points a game in the Western Conference Finals, and he's giving you solid defense every night, regular season, playoffs, etc. I mean, I think I don't remember if the number was that he was like third in the league in steals, I want to say. I don't remember if that was for a guard or total, but still, I mean, he's an impactful defensive player on the best defensive team in the league. And ultimately, that's going to be the team that, in my opinion, is going to win a title. And he is playing a big role towards that, both regular season, playoffs. If you were to look at a guy like Halliburton, like, you will say that, they played at a 61 win pace from January 1st on, but like they were also 16 and 18 to start the year. Like Shea, from game 1 until the game we saw last night,
they've been the best team from pillar to post thus far.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So I mean, that's what he gets credit for. Like, there was no lull at any point during the season, at any point in the playoffs. I mean, you could say, okay, there was a bad game here or there. Game 3 was a bad game, but I mean, we've pretty much had it for a while, and especially since Tatum got hurt, like, this is a team that's, unless someone gets hurt, they're going to win the title.
Yeah, exactly. He did get help last night, though. Jalen Williams, another great performance last night. He scored 34 points on 13-24 shooting. I was calling SGA and Williams, I've been calling that since the playoffs, really, the possible modern-day Jordan Pippen. Kind of feels that way a little bit. Not saying that's good. Just look at the dynamic. I'm saying it reminds me of Jordan Pippen.
I mean, I think it could get there at some point, but it's just got to play out first. I mean, like, this team will be together for a long time. So, I mean, it's like I'm looking at it like not so much as, I guess you don't want to just assume a championship, but it's like, okay, if they win a title this year, the way they're set up with how they've drafted well and how they have more draft picks coming up and young players, and they have so much flexibility in terms of that. Like, with so many teams in trouble financially with the second apron and like limited with what they can do, like, how far can this OKC team go? So, I mean, if you're talking about in 5 years, they've won 2 or 3 titles, then yeah, you're probably putting them in that type of conversation. It's just that since they haven't won anything yet and they're still so young, it's hard to say like, oh, Jalen Williams, who's just like, this is his first time on like a stage of this caliber playing like this. It's hard to assume that he's going to be Pippen with 6 titles, but you're right. But
what I was saying though, like,
realistically, yes,
right. Yeah. And that's what I mean. I'm not even considering the title. I'm just considering this in terms of the dynamic. SGA is obviously the best scorer in the league, and what he does, and then Pippen, of course, was like the great 2-way player. He just did things where he fit in what he could, and I feel like Jalen Williams kind of has that same vibe as Pippen. It's funny we talk about like I mean, obviously they got to finish the job first. They're 5 wins away from that, but it's funny, like, we look at this. We had 3 teams last couple of years, and we might have touched on this before in the past. How like 3 teams before in the past, couple of years, I won a title. We assume, oh well, they won a title. Their situation's pretty decent. They can win another 2 or 3 before it's all said and done, and then it doesn't happen. Milwaukee had that situation. You had Milwaukee had a situation. You had the situation also too with Denver, right? And then now this year, and Boston. We all assumed that when they win a title, these teams are locked in, the core's locked in. They should get a title or 2. And then something happens, or they miss the window, and now the window's changed. And it happens so sudden. It feels like with Oklahoma City, barring catastrophic injuries, this is the correct answer because of the youth and the assets. Those 3 teams didn't have that.
Yeah, I mean, Boston was an expensive team, whether they won last year or not, whether Tatum got injured this year or not. I mean, as we've talked about, I mean, Boston was on their way to, even if they had won a title, probably looking to move at the very least a Holiday or a Porzingis. Obviously now with Tatum's injury, maybe looking at more than that. But Oklahoma City doesn't have those issues. They have all their draft picks and other teams' draft picks. All these guys are super young. There aren't any Porzingis's or Holidays, guys north of 30. I think Kenrich Williams is the only guy who's like, quote unquote, older, and he's 31. So, I mean, every guy is pretty much not even in his prime yet. I mean, I was watching the game last night thinking, like, with Chet Holmgren, it's like he hasn't even scratched the surface for how good he can be. I mean, he could be, I don't want to say like a Giannis type player because he'll never be as physical or as dominant. But I mean, look at the ascension that like an Evan Mobley made. I mean, like that should be like Holmgren's career path. And since he's a better shooter than Mobley, maybe even better than that. So, I mean, he hasn't even come close to his potential. Jalen Williams, like he's not in his prime yet. SGA, I could say, is like in the early part of his prime. But I mean, still, the runway is long for this. Even if even if SGA were to have a Tatum-like injury, you still look at it and say, everything's cost controlled. They've drafted all these guys. They've got guys that are going to play next year, like Nikola Topic, who they drafted last year. I mean, if that guy hadn't torn his ACL, might have been like a top 2 or 3 pick. So, I mean, like they've got guys still waiting in the wings that can help them out next year. So, plus all their draft picks. So, I mean, they have so much flexibility. And even if they have to lose a role player here or there, like if they can't keep guys like, they're going to keep their main 3, but let's say like the guys on the bench, eventually. The Lou Dortz, if they can't keep him, if they can't keep like a Wiggins or an Isaiah Joe, like maybe even some of like the fringe rotation players, they'll just replace those guys with draft picks. I mean, they have first rounders, like they have the 15th pick this year. Okay, if they can't keep a Joe or a Wiggins, just draft a wing at 15 and then just slide that guy into the rotation. So, I mean, like they have so much flexibility from that sense where they can move guys on rookie scale deals into their rotation that aren't going to be asked to play major minutes because you're still going to have Chet and you're going to have SGA and you're going to have Jalen Williams. So, I mean, they're locked into that for a while. Whereas with Boston, you knew that this was going to become expensive fast. And there was a lot of older guys on the team. And that's been the issue with a lot of other teams. Like with Denver, they were getting expensive, which is why they had to let guys go. You're not seeing that with an OKC, which is the only reason why I feel like they're so well positioned because they've drafted so well and they have so many of their assets. It's not like they're going to go 3 or 4 years without making a meaningful draft pick or like, they've traded swaps or they've traded firsts. They have everything set up for the future. So it's really like an embarrassment of riches type of thing with them.
Yeah. I feel like this team also watching them and again to now really get to know them personally a little bit, like because now they're getting more TV time as we get closer and closer to the finals. Like they're a very likable team. They remind me of the better version of the early Warriors before the Warriors really broke through, before the Draymond personality came through, and before a little bit of the let's say arrogance, but more confidence, Steph Curry, if you will. But when the Warriors were fresh in 2015, everybody loved them because it was so nice and nice and cuddly and that kind of thing. OKC has that kind of vibe, but even more humble. Because I'm watching Jalen Williams talk at the post game last night at SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt, and he said, "This seems like a very good kid with his head on the shoulders. This very well spoken. He understands the moment, but doesn't get ahead of himself." And same with SGA. Like they do interviews together as a team. They don't do it like it's just SGA. Like you have your stars. They have their stars, but it feels like they're a great team. Like they play for each other. Reminds me of the Spurs too, also with Tim Duncan, those guys. Like it's a great unit, and this is why this success is so warranted with what they're doing, especially in this era where everything's about me. What can this one player? Whereas the Thunder, they got a star, got the MVP, but you wouldn't think that because the way he talks about his teammates and they're just close and tight knit, that reverberates through the the TV.
And I think a lot of that is because he's, I don't know if suffered's the right word, but like he's endured the down years. Like he's been part of this team when they were at their lowest,
right?
When they were getting the second pick to draft a Chet Holmgren, So I mean, he's seen it from all angles. He's at the mountaintop now.
Mm-hmm.
But he also knows what it was like when they were struggling, and so I don't think that's lost upon him. It's not as if he's team hopping or anything like that. Like this is a bottom to the top sort of success story. And I don't think that's lost on him. I also think that it's a product of Sam Presti, of Mark Dagnall. I think that they prioritize being buttoned up. They prioritize how they handle media. I don't think that they want to let too much out. So, I mean, I think that they're very, you're not seeing like what like an Anthony Edwards would be doing in a post game. You're not ever going to hear that from an SGA. You're not going to have to worry about finding these guys in post-game press conferences for cursing left and right. I just think that like they prioritize how they're represented. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that they're all drafted. They've all grown together. So I think it's like a family atmosphere. It's not like this was just cobbled together overnight. They added on the fringes with Hartenstein and with Caruso, but those were supplemental pieces that were meant to help the stars that they basically brought in or that have been grown here. Obviously, SGA they didn't draft, but they got him after 1 year in the league, and they sort of bought, I don't want to say low on him, but they traded away PG and figured we're going to try and develop this from the ground up. And I think that because they've developed it from the ground up, that's why these guys are so invested in it. They're not looking at it like a KD where, oh, if this doesn't work, I'm just going to request a trade and go somewhere else. Like I think guys are very invested in each other's success because each guy has been instrumental in getting them to this point.
So ESPN's Kendrick Perkins, who's known for very, very wild takes, he actually had a take this past, I think, weekend, where he suggested that SGA is already the greatest player in Thunder history. Now, we see that. Obviously, you talk about people like this Thunder's history alone since 2008. Guys like, of course, Kevin Durant. You talk about guys like Russell Westbrook, James Harden, who played there shortly for a little while. But then you forget also, too, that the Thunder are also the old Supersonics. Having said that, though, this take, what do you think of that? Do you think there's some truth to what he's saying there?
Yeah, although I think that I'd rather have this conversation in 2 weeks if I were him, not for us. Obviously, we can talk about it. But I mean, I think it's more a conversation to have if and when they win a title versus now, because based on everything I just said, if you're assuming that this team's going to win the title and they're going to be dominant for a number of years or in the championship mix for the next 5 to 7 years, let's say, Kevin Durant never won a title with OKC. So how could you not put SGA at the top of that list? And I don't know if Perkins was intending it to include the old Supersonics. But I mean, I guess even if you were, you're looking at like the Gary Paytons and Sean Kemps.
Dennis Johnson. You're looking at guys like that. I don't think it's ever. I think SGA is already probably better than, if not all Sonic players in the history of the league, of the franchise rather. I mean, maybe I probably might still Peyton over him right now for the time being, but a ring changes that. I think if you're looking at an argument for him against Kevin Durant, because that's really the main thing is him or Kevin Durant. The argument can be made in defense of Kevin Durant is that he may not got a ring yet, but he also had to do it in the era where he was playing against Steph Curry's Warriors, against the Spurs, who was another dynastic team. So Kevin Durant had more, even late Kobe teams, the Laker teams. So the argument can be made that, well, SGA has a better runway than say Durant had in terms of that for context purposes. I'm uncomfortable right now saying even if SGA wins a ring, I'm uncomfortable saying that only because of the fact that Kevin Durant to me is already a top 15 player all time. First off, let's start there, and we're not even talking about SGA in that ilk just yet. Maybe down the road we can talk about that. But being the best player in franchise history doesn't mean best player in NBA history either. Like LeBron James, number 2 on my list. He's nowhere close to being the greatest Laker all time though, because it means different. I think the argument made that because, especially with the title, it might mean more because SGA got there very young, like Durant also too, but got there very young, went through the down years, suffered through the down years, and then built up and then won the title. So yes, to your point, this is definitely a conversation to have in 2-3 weeks if the Thunder, of course, close the deal. But there's an argument to be made about that. But I do see both sides of the argument where, like, if you're a Durant fan, you're defending Durant, no ring, but harder journey to get there. And yes, he did leave. That's a demerit against him too. Also, he did leave leave the team. He left to the team that beat them, that they were up 3-1 against. There's another argument against Durant, but at the same time, it's like it's tough because the league is. I don't want to sit there and say it's easier because you still got to do the work, but I think there's arguments on both ends right now.
Yeah, I think the LeBron comparison that you brought up is perfect because I don't think anyone will ever confuse SGA when all is said and done for being a better player than Durant. I think Durant will go down in history as 12, 13, 14, or 10, depending on how you want to make your list. I don't think SGA, unless he wins 5 or 6 titles, I don't think he's ever going to get to that level. So Durant will always be the better player. But given the other things that you said, if Durant is leaving town to go join the team that beat them, if he's playing more than half his career in other places that aren't OKC, if SGA wins a title, how can you overlook that in terms of importance to that franchise?
Yeah. So I think I put a pin on that one for a second in that conversation. But like I said, the Thunder looking to close it out on tomorrow night at home at Oklahoma City. The other series, of course, tonight, Game 4. That one's getting a little all of a sudden. Look. If you told me second quarter of Game 3, you're down 0-2, you're down 20 points, and you got guys in foul trouble, the Knicks are cooked. I text everybody. I text you. They look cooked, and you said, "Yeah, defense and this and that." And then a light bulb went off. Again, look, we understand that 20-point lead in the NBA today don't mean shit. I mean, because a 20-point lead, we've seen it many times. The Knicks have come back 3 times this postseason and won all those games after being down that many points. But, if you took the series in totality, though, this has been a competitive series overall. Like, let's be real about this. Deficit aside, New York gave Game 1 to Indiana. They should be up 2-1 now, not the other way around. So let's not forget that. And I think the series is going the way it should go. I think this thing is still going to go 7 games. I think both these teams are relatively even. I think there's certain advantages each team has on each side. But can the Knicks tonight, do you think they'll even up tonight?
I do. And again, I'm looking to Vegas on this. I feel like being a 2.5 point spread with 75% of the money on Indiana,
right,
is probably a good sign for the Knicks.
Yeah.
I always look at it too. Like when I looked at the OKC line yesterday, like when they were a 2.5 point favorite in Game 3, all the money was on Minnesota, and then they got blown out. And then last night they were a 3.5 point favorite. So I mean, again, this is going into the minutia of looking at Vegas lines and whatnot. But when they upped the line for Oklahoma City in Game 4, I assume that meant that they expected it to go one way. If they thought it was going to go the other way, they would have had it as the same line as the previous game. So I feel like it's a good sign for the Knicks that the line is where it is. If it were Indiana -3.5, -4.5, you'd look at it and say, okay, Indiana's probably going to win this game. But I feel like you probably feel good about it if you're the Knicks, because you know that you avoided disaster and you've sort of gotten a new lease on life with the way that went. I will push back a little bit, though, about saying they should be up 2-1, because you could also say that Indiana shouldn't have blown the last game. They should be up 2-1. So if the teams just won the games that they were supposed to win, it would probably still wind up with Indiana.
The only reason I'll challenge that, though, is because Indiana's up 20 points in the second quarter. You have a whole second half to come back and make that a game. The Knicks were still within earshot winning that game, even though they were down 10 in the third quarter. And 8-0 run to open the quarter, you back in the game. So that was more realistic happening. Whereas the way New York lost in Game 1, they were up what?
Yeah,
9 points and less than a couple seconds to go. They were up 6 or 7 with like less than a minute to go. That's a little different. That's a little bit of a shock to the system there. Like, whoa.
But then we could also go back to the Boston series and say Boston gave up 2 leads like that, and that they could have been up 3-0. I mean, it's just
of course, yeah.
The reason why the game has changed so much is because the pace of play has changed and the 3-pointer has changed. So I mean, like 20 years ago, we weren't seeing teams make these comebacks because there just weren't as many possessions, because teams weren't taking shots with 17 and 18 seconds left on the shot clock and running up and down the floor so much. I mean, Indiana's goal is basically, okay, the Knicks get a bucket, we want to get a layup at the other end without even slowing down the pace. Like we want to get that layup with 20 on the shot clock. So, I mean, it's just, there's so many more possessions for things to basically go wrong once you get up by 20. I think that Indiana probably still feels okay, because even with all that, they could be up 3-0 very easily. I know you can say like, okay.
Yeah, no, of course. Absolutely.
They shouldn't have won Game 1, but I mean, both teams, I think, feel good about it, which is why I feel better about my prediction of Indiana in 7, because I was texting you during the last game. I'm like, it looks like it's going to be 3-0, and that prediction doesn't look very good. Indiana might just be better. So, I mean, obviously, the Knicks found something there. But I still think the Knicks have concerns. I think probably more concerns than Indiana has. I feel like Indiana has more counters to what the Knicks want to do. I mean, like they can still throw Miles Turner on Josh Hart and sort of have him play in like a roving position on defense. They can put Siakam on Cat. I think if you're the Knicks, you're still concerned about Brunson and Cat's defense.
And foul trouble too on top of that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Brunson had 4 fouls at halftime.
Yeah, I was having this discussion with someone earlier, and they were like, "Oh, why is Brunson picking up so many fouls?" I'm like, because they're basically like Carlisle's philosophy is we want to get the ball to whoever Brunson's guarding, and we want to go at him every time. And I mean, at the end of I can't remember if it was game 2 or game 1. The philosophy's basically been the same. Like we want to run pick and roll and get Brunson mismatched onto someone, and then just get the ball to that person and let them go to work. Not that this matters, but I do think that Brunson got kind of a rough call on that play that was challenged, the charging play that took him out of the game. That play was reviewed. I still thought, even after watching the review, I thought it was a charge. So I thought that the Knicks got a bad break on that one. But in some ways, it allowed them to put a more defensive lineup on the floor that allowed them to get back in the game. So it's hard to say with some of those variables taken out, like if it's the Pacers' top 8-9 guys against the Knicks' 5 or 6 best guys. I still think that Indiana probably feels good about that, given that 2 of the Knicks' 6 players aren't good defenders. I think the Cat lineup worked. I mean, Cat's an amazing offensive player, as we saw in the fourth quarter. But I think the reason why that worked is because you had Deuce McBride flying all over the floor and playing really good defense, and you basically just said, we're going to let Cat cook the entire quarter. You weren't running the 2-man game. You weren't worried about defense at the other end. It was just, we're going to have 4 guys flying around and Cat going to work on offense. That's not a sustainable way to win, because you're not going to sit Jalen Brunson for long stretches of time. Like the Knicks are going to have to figure that out with both him and Cat on the floor, because they need both those guys on the floor. Yeah. And I also don't know that Mitchell Robinson is as effective. He's playing 30 minutes a game, like stamina wise and also offensive limitations. He's probably better suited to play 18 or 20 minutes a game. I'm fine with them starting him if they want to stagger it so that him and Cat aren't on the floor at the same time. So you don't have some of the problems that you ran into in the first 2 games. You can kind of do it the way you did last game, like stagger it. So, okay, when Brunson's off the floor, Cat's on the floor, and Mitch is off the floor. Maybe when Brunson's on the floor, you have Mitch out there to try and hide some of that. Will they be able to do that? I don't know, because again, Tibbs wants to play 6 or 7 guys, and he wants to play Brunson 40-something minutes. I don't know how that game would have played out if he weren't in foul trouble.
Yeah. Cat, like I told you guys over the course of the last couple of years, I've never been a Cat guy. This year, he grew on me. And you see moments like that, like game 3, where back against the wall, you're down 20, your best player's in foul trouble, and Cat steps up. And not just like shooting threes all the time, he's actually going to the basket and getting aggressive. And it's like, those are things you see like, wow, if we could do that every single game, or almost every game pretty much, that's the perception that he sheds, because he's that skilled. Like, to be honest with you, he should be the best player on the team, not Jalen Brunson. To be honest with you, he's that talented a guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been hard, and that's been the knock on Brunson for years, like in the national media, that could a guy who's 6'1" be a dominant player on your team? To like Curry is an anomaly. Like, is Brunson better suited to be the second best player, for as great as he is? I mean, like we've said he's a top 10 guy in the league right now. So, I mean, I feel like it's disrespectful to Brunson, but at the same time, when you see what Cat can do at 6'11", 7 feet tall, should they be running more of their offense around him? And I will give him credit too. There were possessions like early in the fourth quarter where he gets the ball. He could have easily settled for a 3. And instead he, pump faked and drove to the rim, like, the and one dunk. Like, he gets credit for not just settling, for being aggressive, for taking the points when they were there, instead of just stepping back and taking a 27-foot 3, which if those don't go in, the game's over. But like, his aggressiveness was really what propelled them early in that fourth. And I mean, it was a 2-point game basically with 7-8 minutes left in the game. So, I mean, like, it got right back into anybody's game fairly quickly based on how dominant he was in that early fourth, and also how well that defensive unit, that MASH unit that they put on the floor to end the third quarter was. I mean, if you had told me that they were down 20 points at one point and that they had a lineup with DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet on the floor, I would have thought that Josh Hart. Like, where's the offense coming from with those three guys on the floor? But they made it work. That hustle became so contagious that every time they moved the starter back in the game, they were playing at that level. And so I give them a lot of credit too, guys that it almost seemed like a give-up lineup, but their defense allowed them to turn Indiana over and really got them back in the game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight's game. I think even if the Pacers wins game 4, it's far from over. I could see the Knicks winning game 5 and then even win game 6, and it comes down to the big one in game 7. I don't think. I think until this series is actually closed and done with, I think anyone can still win the series, honestly.
I said that to my buddy who's a diehard Knicks fan. I'm like, they had to win game 3 because if you go down 3-0, the series is over. But even if they lose game 4, there's still a pathway for them to winning the series.
Without question.
You're going to have 2 of the games at home.
Right.
I guess the downside for both teams is that I don't know that home means all that much.
So far, it doesn't.
Yeah, and that's just historically, it hasn't meant much in these playoffs because New York lost their games to Detroit at home. They lost to Boston at home. So I mean,
Cleveland beat Indiana's one loss against the Cavaliers in the series was at home, and they won all the games on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that home court means that much, which is why prior to the series I picked Indiana in 7 because I'm like, this is like a nip and tuck series. I could see it going either way. And if you're just looking for differentiators, that's why I went with Indiana. But I mean, I could totally see the Knicks winning in 7. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, given the fact that they were up 2-0 with a 20-point lead in game 3, the Knicks are right there now. Like this comes back to being a nip and tuck series. Even if game 4 goes to Indiana, then all the pressure's on Indiana for game 6 if the Knicks can extend it, and then that becomes a game 7 for them.
It's not like the West series where like we just even after game 3 when they got blown up by 42 points. It's like okay. But they're not going to do that again game 4, and they're going to bounce back game 4. Everybody, I know you felt that way. I know I felt that way. Because whether they lost by 42 or 2, it doesn't matter. It's still one loss.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, looking ahead, I just see that flaws on both teams that can be taken advantage of, whereas I feel like of the 4 teams, Oklahoma City has the fewest flaws. Like they don't have guys you can play off the floor. Like you can play Brunson or Cat off the floor. You can play Halliburton off the floor, like guys who have defensive weaknesses.
Yeah.
Not one guy on OKC who you will go out of your way to target. Like you're not targeting Lou Dort, who is a first player. So, and I mean, again, Shea being 3rd in the league in steals or whatever it was. Like all these guys can play defense, whereas I'm looking at Indiana, I'm looking at New York. They both have flaws that other teams can sort of take advantage of, which is why both coaches are going to say, okay, like, do we have to move Miles Turner onto Josh Hart because we want to get Siakam onto Cat? Like with Oklahoma City, you're not looking at any of that stuff because every one of their guys can defend.
Would you say if you rank the 10 best players in this series in the Eastern Conference Finals, 10 best players, would you say top 3 to 5 best players are probably on the Knicks?
Yes. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and that was the thing earlier before the series even started. It's like the Knicks have the best 5-man unit by far. It's just that will those guys tire down if they're forced to play 43, 44 minutes a night, whereas Indiana's playing 9 guys? I just almost feel like they can rope-a-dope the Knicks a little bit and sort of get them tired legs. But that wasn't an issue last game. So many guys were in foul trouble. Right. So because they went to like a 9-man unit, that's what they were forced to, but that's why I think it worked. I don't know that works if tonight or if in game 5 you're trying to run Bridges and Brunson and Anunoby out there for 42 to 43 minutes. I think you have to, for better or worse, live with Landry Shamet playing some minutes. I don't know if they're going to play DeLon Wright. I think a lot of that was because of Brunson's foul trouble. But I mean, what those guys gave them, you could make a strong argument for playing them more minutes, and that allows other guys to be fresher down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that's the only advantage the Knicks have in this series is that we just mentioned. I think the Indiana advantage is obviously the depth and especially the coaching. Rick Carlisle.
Yeah, Carlisle is he's a better coach. And I mean, like you could see it in I can't remember if it was game 1 or 2, but like just the way that he saved his challenges towards the end of the game. I think that was game 2 where Tibbs used.
It was game 2. Yeah, it was game 2.
Tibbs used a challenge on an obvious offensive foul call on Brunson, and it's like you're now losing your ability to, like, not all possessions are created equal. Like you saw it last night. It's like, why is Minnesota challenging an out of bounds play this early in the game, even if it's obvious, you're only leaving yourself with one challenge the entire rest of the game, right or wrong. And it's like Carlisle saved both of his challenges. Actually, that might have even been game one, but like he prioritizes his challenges in a much better way than Tibbs does, or even like Chris Finch last night. And I'm like, you need to save those challenges for like mission critical parts of the game where it's
Absolutely.
like a minute left and those possessions decide the game. Whereas you challenge an obvious offensive foul and then you lose it. Now, if there's an out of bounds play, you don't get the benefit of having the refs look at it. You're just screwed the rest of the game. You're at their mercy. If they make a bad call, you just have to live with it. I like how Carlisle has basically used his challenges, maybe more so than any of the four coaches that are left. So I feel like there definitely is a coaching advantage there. And again, he's making sure the ball gets to whoever Cat or whoever Brunson is guarding. And look, that's the way he wants to play, and that's a smart way to play it. Will it ultimately work? Will the Knicks be fresh enough? Will they move the ball around enough? Those are all questions that we'll find out in the next couple of days. But I think Indiana likes that matchup, the coaching matchup for sure.
Regardless of sport, I've always said that those things are what separate great coaches from good coaches. Like Bill Belichick was always master of that, saving his timeouts, saving all those things he needed, challenges, and for moments he needed for, as you said, mission critical. Whereas good coaches were good, like Thibodeau, will use them probably when they probably shouldn't be using them because it's, not the right time in our opinion. But it is what it is there. But like I said, I think tonight should be a barn burner of a game. I cannot wait to watch Game 4. All right, some news and notes to get you out of here. First things first, I'm going to play a quick video. It's a video, actually, of Luka Doncic at either a basketball game out overseas or a soccer game overseas, but he looks to be in pretty decent shape, man. Here's a quick here's the quick video of his appearance recently, where he all was. Here.
Luka pulled up to Liga Endesa, the Spanish basketball league, to watch some hoops and posted some workout photos looking slimmer than usual. Now, I know these sometimes surface in the offseason before Luka eventually falls out of shape again, but after that shocking trade, I think he's got some extra motivation this time around. Still, time will tell. Luka pulled up to...
All right, your thoughts on that? I know you mentioned in the past that, a lot of players do this, they get in shape, they look great in August, and then they come back by, October, November, and like everything's back to normal again. However, I feel like this is different because I commented even before the season ended that Luka post-trade actually looked decent. Actually, he looked like he was getting in shape, actually. And then he continues to lose some weight. Now, obviously, that's all relative to, players, of course. Losing weight and then losing place of players, two different things. But given the narratives, how the season ended against Minnesota in the first round of playoffs, and people saying, Luka and, his weight issues and stuff, and can he continue? Can you not be a turnstile on defense? Because one of the things we came out of that series is saying is that Luka's more like a James Harden. Like he's a great offensive player, but defensively he's a damn turnstile. And to me, defense is all about effort, not skill, just effort. Is this, in your opinion, do you believe this is a sign of things to come? Is this the LeBron influence? Do you think Luka will be engaged and keep his weight off going forward?
I will say it's much ado about nothing until proven otherwise, because I've heard this is a tale as old as time in the NBA. The offseason workout videos, the Joel Embiid workout videos, the common line was, "Oh, he lost 30 pounds this offseason. He looks great." And here we are. He's still got knee problems. He's still playing at a heavier weight than what he should have been. Ben Simmons was a famous one. We always saw his workout videos in the offseason, and then it didn't mean a hill of beans come time when the season actually started. So I mean, we're so far away from October that it's hard to know what shape he'll be in then. And also, even if he's in better shape, is that going to make him a better defender? I don't know that the answer to that is yes. I mean, like Austin Reeves, I don't think anyone's ever questioned him being in or out of shape, and he's not a good defender and probably never will be. So I don't know that him being fit will change his abilities on defense. That said, it's certainly, you'd much rather see this than the alternative, but I will have to see this going forward more so than just, I mean, we're not even in June yet. So, I mean, it's hard for me to give credit to a guy who should be motivated. You're right. He should be heavily motivated. I don't know that it's LeBron. It should be himself, only because, I think the trade is probably the biggest wake-up call. if you're traded from a team that you thought you were going to spend your entire career with, that's them saying, we don't believe in something that you're doing. That should be his motivation for changing it, if anything. So I don't know that it's LeBron or Rob Pelinka or anybody telling him he needs to get in better shape. Like, that's something that he's got to look inward and do. And if he can keep the weight off, that's great. But again, I have to see that come October. And if he does it by then I'll give him full credit for it. But we're just so far away from the start of the season. It's hard for me to know if this means anything or not.
The only reason why I fall slightly short of, agreeing with you wholeheartedly is the fact that, you have the examples of the Embiids and all those other players you mentioned, but this is LA. This is the Lakers, where everything is scrutinized everything's on a microscope in LA. And I'm not even saying LeBron is telling him to do this, but you have to at least imagine that there's some influence there. There's some influence from Lakers brass to say, listen, blah, 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 you got to keep yourself in shape, blah, blah. And I think add the pressure, all that, being a Laker, and you want to be all-time great, and what it requires to be in that conversation. Maybe Luka, maybe the light bulb went off, these last couple months for Luka in a personal way. We're like, okay, I'm losing weight, but I need to get into optimal shape now to be among those guys. Because now it's not just you being in Dallas. Okay, it's great to be one of the biggest Mavericks all time, as you and Dirk, all that, but you're talking about like Luka Doncic trying to be an all-time great Laker. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame in itself. Of those great players. The Magics, the Kobe's, the Wilts, Kareem's, you name it, LeBron's. Shaq. So Luka, maybe a light bulb went off. I don't know. I agree with you. We want to see it to believe it, kind of thing. But I think a light bulb might have went off finally for him.
And also, he hasn't inked a long-term extension yet. So, I mean, as of today, he's still scheduled to be a free agent after the 26th season. So, I mean, that might be part of it too. The fact that if he comes out and it misses half the season because he's injured and is overweight, like, how does that affect his status, not just with the Lakers, but with any other team going forward? So, I mean, I think that there's got to be some emphasis on that too from a financial standpoint. He already lost probably $100 million by not getting a max extension with Dallas, by being traded, by LA not having his bird rights. I mean, if he signs for $240 million, not saying that that's chump change, but it's not the $380 that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably going to extend for in OKC. So, I mean, I would say his conditioning, his defense probably already cost him a lot of money. It could cost him more. So, I mean, again,
good point.
We haven't seen an extension signed yet. I mean, obviously, the assumption is that the Lakers will retain him on a 4 or 5 year max, to the max they can give him. But until that's signed, he's not bound to the Lakers until that deal is signed, and they're not bound to him. So, I mean, maybe he's looking at it and saying, if I want to get paid, if I want to be in this market, I've got to prioritize my shape.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. I mean, you could have made the argument for Embiid for years. I know it's not the LA market, but I mean, Zion, Embiid, any number of guys who have had like lower leg issues and weight issues, like those are all concerns.
Yeah. Next thing here, the Bucks expect to meet with Giannis this week. To basically they're gonna do a full court press to keep him in Milwaukee. So far, no news on him requesting a trade yet. There's been some rumors about like he's open to the idea of a trade, but we'll see how that plays out in the weeks to come. What can the Bucks do as a franchise? I know we've done a draft. We've done this little thing on the show where like we cooked up some ideas where he'd be a good fit at. But what can Milwaukee do based on their numbers, based on where there's a franchise and the situation, to improve their roster to keep Giannis here in the short term? Is there any moves they can make?
The first thing that they can do to convince him to stay is basically, before we did our Giannis draft of 10 teams, was the argument that I laid out.
Right.
It was basically, you are going to command so much in a trade that we are going to deplete the other team of all their tradable assets to where they're not going to be able to build around you. The one thing that San Antonio is the obvious spot because they've already got stars on the roster. They also have the number 2 pick. They're the one exception, maybe Houston being the second exception, where they can trade a boatload of assets and still have stars on their roster, or still, I don't know if you consider De'Aaron Fox a star, but like he would be a third star. He would be a third star in this case, where he's a good player. Maybe you bring Chris Paul back at like a vet minimum. You still have pieces in place. But if you make the argument for every other team in the league, pretty much, they are going to have to trade all their players. It no longer becomes viable, I would say, for him to leave Milwaukee if we're going to, like, take the Nets or Toronto or any other team that's got a load of draft picks. Take Oklahoma City, let's say. All these teams that have draft picks, Utah would never make the trade, but I mean, just teams that have draft picks. Like,
Right.
If you have 9 to trade, we're going to ask for 8 of them. And then at that point, what are you surrounding Giannis with? And then it doesn't make sense for him to leave and basically, I don't want to say tarnish his legacy, but I mean, if you're going to start team hopping, you better team hop with the intention of winning titles. And I feel like the only team that he could do that with, at least in the next year or two, would be San Antonio. And then at that point, if you're leaving and to go to a different location, like let's say you use Toronto as an example of being, they're an international team. They've got all of Canada. They've got Masai Ujiri, who Giannis has a relationship with. Okay, but you're going to have to trade Scotty Barnes and all your picks and probably a couple other players to make the salary work. At what point does that make sense for him to go play with Emmanuel quickly? Like he might as well just stay in Milwaukee. So, I mean, like there's a select few teams, unless Milwaukee's willing to take 40 cents on the dollar for him, which I don't think they're willing to do, and nor should they, because every move that they've made has been stamped by Giannis's approval. So they shouldn't be doing him a solid. They've done him a solid for years. They've gotten the coaches in there that he's wanted. They've traded future draft picks. They've also signed his, and this was something that I mentioned a month ago or whenever we did that podcast, like his brother is also an NBA champion.
And he's back now. You see that? I'm back.
Yeah, but like they took care of his brother when they didn't need to do that. So that's probably holds a lot of weight with them. And the argument then on top of all that if you go to another team, they're not going to have anything for you. The second argument would be with Boston's situation in the East, does it make sense for us to run this back and say Boston's out of the picture for next year? We just have to get past Indiana, Cleveland, and the Knicks. With you in tow, is that enough to do? You're better off staying here and trying to do it, the place where, you became Americanized in Milwaukee. Again, as I mentioned, they taught him how to drive a car. Like he learned how to be a functioning NBA basketball player because they developed him. That organization has invested a lot into him, just like he's invested a lot in them. But if you're going to take a shot on a lesser team, you might as well take a lesser shot on this one. So, I mean, like the East being possibly wide open, that's number 2. Number 3, I would say, could that 2031 pick, which would have a lot of value, just like a Suns pick would have, because you'd imagine in 2031, in 6 years, Giannis is no longer a dominant NBA player because he doesn't have a jump shot like Durant to fall back on. So can you use that pick as an enticement to another team? Let's say you go to Utah and you say, like, Utah does not want to win games next year. Like their whole thing. I read a story in the Tribune. I believe it was the Tribune. I don't know, middle of the season.
Tribune? The Chicago Tribune?
No, the Utah, the Salt Lake City Tribune was, will they win too many games next year? Like they don't want to draft a player who's going to help them win enough games that it's then going to impact their ability to get a top 5 pick next year. So, I mean, like, they are so entrenched in the tank that you could look at a team like Utah and say, okay, any of their players, Markkanen may be too rich, but like, can you get Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson or John Collins or some combination of 2 of the 3 for that pick and some salary? Like, could you go to them and say, we'll take John Collins and Colin Sexton, we'll give you the 2031 first unprotected and Kuzma's salary and Pat Connaughton's salary. And, is there a way to make all that stuff work? You probably need Kuzma, Connaughton, and Bobby Portis or something like that. Again, I don't know the specifics of the salary cap, but I'm just saying that would be the kind of deal I think that they'd look at, where can they use that pick as a sweetener to another team that is looking to tank and maybe more forward thinking. And can you turn that into maybe 2 functional players, one of them being a point guard? And then at that point, you're bringing back Gary Trent Jr. and Jericho Sims and those kind of guys. Is that enough? I don't know. I don't know what Giannis's thought process is. Although I heard that he was supposed to meet with them last week. I think he's on vacation now. I don't know if he's in Greece, but I saw something online of someone taking a picture with him at O'Hare, the Chicago airport. So I'm assuming he was probably going overseas to Greece. So, I mean, I don't know that the meeting that was supposed to take place last week obviously didn't happen. So, I mean, it would probably be this week that it would take place. So we'll see when that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be there necessarily either. His agent could be there.
True. Yeah. That could happen. Although I'd imagine that if he were going to request a trade, he's got to be at that meeting. Like, I don't like after Milwaukee has given you 13 years of basing every move around you, to go to Greece and then have your agent show up and request a trade would be, that wouldn't be a good look for anybody involved. So I'd imagine that if he were requesting a trade, he'd have to be there. I'd also imagine that he probably would have already requested it already. So I feel like they can probably convince him if they can lay out a path to improving their roster. Now, maybe they can't. Maybe that one pick doesn't have the value that I think it does to assemble the veteran role players that they will need to make a meaningful jump next year, even in a weakened Eastern Conference. And maybe that's possible. I don't know. But I think that would be the Milwaukee pitch to him.
Right. All right. One last thing's out of here. David Adelman, who is no longer the interim for the Nuggets. He's now named the official head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I thought he did a very good job considering everything that happened, considering the firing of Mike Malone and the GM. Literally, was it 4 games before the end of the regular season?
Yeah, 3 or 4 games.
I remember you and I coming to the playoffs saying this is bad. You fire your coach, you fire your GM a week before the season ends. Okay, you bring in this. Obviously, you interim becomes the interim coach, of course. Then you got to play the Clippers, who are red hot coming to the playoffs, and all you do is beat them in 7 games, and you take the Thunder to 7 games. It's a team who might win a title. I thought Adelman did a good job, all considering the situation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that Malone's personality and style started rubbing on a lot of guys the wrong way, and I think that Adelman is sort of the antithesis of that. So I think if it has the stamp of approval from Jokic, that would be good enough for me, even if it didn't necessarily have the stamp of it, even if he didn't want any say in the decision. I would say the way that they played after he took over, given that short time period, was a pretty good sign. I thought that it was probably a foregone conclusion that he was going to keep that job. So well-deserved. And I guess we'll see how it goes going forward. But I think that he did enough to at least have the interim tag removed and get a chance to steer the ship for the next year or two.
You think they consulted with Jokic about this one?
I'd be shocked if they didn't. How could they not? Just
make it. I mean, I figured you have to do something like that. But
I mean, and that's not like, oh, Denver was kowtowing to their player. I think that even if you're a team like Utah or Washington, if you're making a move like that, you still want to, like, Adelman was in practice every day with Malone and the other coaches. I think you want to know, even before you give him the interim job, if he's a guy that you could see moving forward with. I don't think that it would make sense to promote from within if none of your guys, even if they're not like big name players, think that it's a viable strategy. So I think that Jokic was consulted at some point, and that was probably enough for them to move forward with.
All right, you can follow Greg on Twitter at Hrinya NBA. That's Hrinya NBA. I, of course, am on X as well, too, at EJ Christian 7 on Blue Sky as well, the same name as well. Earnestly podcast, of course, all podcast catchers on the audio side, Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts. On video side, of course, the YouTube page at Earnestly Pod, as well as clips of the show at TikTok at Earnestly Pod and Instagram at Earnestly Pod. Until the next episode, we will talk to you guys soon.